I'm here today to talk about my story editing program. I have one of the few courses in the world that trains story editors. It's called Story Editors Studio, and this will be the third time I'm teaching it. Last year I taught it twice to make sure that everything was working with it, that people were getting the most out of it. I had some incredible feedback. I had some incredible writers in the program and some junior story editors and actually some other people. I originally designed this for screenwriters who wanted to become story editors. I had the privilege of training some actual story editors who had never been trained, and then I had made a discovery that other people could actually benefit from the course. I was hesitant to let people in the program who weren't writers because we're serving writers, right? We're serving writers in this job. But last year, people made really good arguments as to why they needed that kind of training, and it was actually excellent. They ended up being some of the most insightful, interesting story editors in the group. So those people last year were producers. Producers are constantly having to evaluate the material that comes to them, whether they're film or TV or both. They need to understand how much work needs to be done on the script. Those were some of my very most interesting story editors. Of course, development executives are also in that position, film jurors, and I even had a picture editor who turned out to be one of the better story editors in the group. So even if you're not a writer and this is an area of interest that can actually apply to another job in film that you do, feel free to ask me questions or find out more about this course. I did get some questions in advance, which I'll read out, but anyone who's here live who wants to ask me anything about the program. So the first question I get is, what does story editors even do? So I was a professional script supervisor for 32 years, as Elizabeth and other people know. And, you know, I never treated it as my only job the whole time. Even though it was the majority of my income, it is a very grueling position on sets. And the older I got, the less I could do it for most of the year. So I would supplement my income doing things that I actually really love to do. So one of the ways is screenwriting, but it's really hard to make a living as a new screenwriter. And what I found was that I made more of a living story editing and punching up other people's work. Because when you have a really good understanding of structure, character, dialogue, when you have a process, when you can actually pinpoint the strengths and weaknesses of other projects and you can help other people, story editing is actually an amazing side hustle. Now, I still think of it as a side hustle because I don't think in Canada it's like a way to make a living full time. In LA, yes, perhaps, but in most of the world, it really is a side hustle, but it is one that has brought so much value to my life. Cody says, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, good movie. I script supervised that. I didn't story edit that, but thank you. Yes. So story editors work with writers in development. Now, there is a job in a TV writer's room where you're on the writing staff, and it's a junior position called a story editor. They actually start you off as a junior story editor, which means you're not necessarily going to be writing a script, but you're helping them break story. That's not what this course is about, although it will teach you the same skills you need to do that job. The program that the Story Editor Studio is for people who want to work in development with other writers in film and television. I train you guys in both because sometimes people come in it, as a film writer solely or as a TV writer solely, and they want to get the other skill sets. By the way, I am known as a comedy screenwriter and a comedy punch-up artist, but as a story editor, I work with all genres. And I do encourage all the story editors to specialize because, more people come to me for comedy than anything else because they know that's my specialty. And I encourage you all to have a specialty because you'll get more work in that. You'll become known for that. However, you will be exposed to all different kinds of writers and all different kinds of genres. And whether you accept those gigs or not is another thing, but where will you get to test out your work in that stuff? That's part of the reason I created Story Editor Studio, because in addition to the training that I give everybody on the process that I was able to come up with over the years on how to best serve my clients efficiently, quickly, and effectively, besides all that, one of the big problems with establishing yourself as a story editor is getting enough experience doing it in multiple genres and formats. So I had, by the time I created Story Editors Studio, I had story edited over 100 scripts in film and TV. And it is, that's a combination of my private clients as well as my students. Because in the higher levels of my writing programs, we do TV Writers Room, where I'm story editing and guiding all the writers and coaching. So I was lucky enough to get that much experience, and people, having that body of clients who, many of them, not all of them, but many of them met me through my programs. Then they would come back to me when they had budgets to develop their shows, and we would continue from there. So I've been very fortunate that I got a lot of volume of experience. So my learning curve has been super quick, and I was able to develop, when I say super quick, my learning curve, I started coaching writers in 2012. So that's been 11 years. But in 11 years to have done 100 scripts is good. It's good. It's good. So what I'm trying to say is I have a process that I know really works now and is effective, and has really helped writers take their work to the next level. And that's what I teach in the program. But in addition to that, this program, unlike any of my other programs, although TV Writers Room is a pretty hands-on writing program, for sure, but Story Editor Studio is even amped up from that, because the people in that program get to work on 14 different scripts in a span of 7 weeks. So instead of waiting a whole year or 2 years or 3 years to secure 14 different clients, you will get the hands-on experience with guidance from me that whole time on 14 different scripts, which are going to be a range of half-hour TV, 1-hour TV, feature film scripts, and feature film treatments, because that's what we get as story editors. Usually that's what we get. Sometimes if any of the TV writers, by the way, where these scripts come from, it depends on the writer. So sometimes this depends on the story editor student. Sometimes they bring in scripts from their own clients, their current clients, or something they've written themselves. Or I have a whole bunch of scripts that writers in the field of different experience levels have submitted for collective story editing in our class, which is super exciting. That's something I didn't do last year. And that was one thing I learned from the first 2 cohorts, that the story editors don't necessarily have to bring in one of their scripts. Of course, it's a massive benefit if you do, because you're getting however many people we have in class. I will accept no more than 20. I won't do more than 20. We've got 18 spots left in that class. Last year we had 13 in the class. So imagine getting that notes from that many writers in training, as well as myself. That's a value add on its own if you have an active project with a client, or if you have an active project on your own. The 2 people that registered so far, one of them is definitely bringing in her own project. The other one is going to let me know. But yeah, that's another aspect to the program where you actually can get story editing on your own work or on your client's work along the way, which would, as you guys know, and we are going to talk about this because that is a question I get all the time. What do story editors get paid? That is the $1 million question. We don't get $1 million, by the way, but that is the question, because people, it's a hard thing to price, in the sense that you can't give kind of a blanket rate, because every project is different. Every writer has different needs. It depends on a bunch of factors, including the level of experience the writer has, the level of experience in the particular genre that this project is in, because someone might be a super experienced feature film writer and they've written their first TV pilot, and they may or may not have any training in TV. So that's going to determine how much work you do with them as a story editor, whether or not, so their experience level, whether, or the length of the project. Is it like a short film, a half-hour movie? Is it a feature film? I mean, a pilot is a lot of work, because in a pilot, you're establishing so many things, the world of your show, the structure of your show, all the character work and all of that. How much does your client understand character work and all of that? So you might come up with a day rate, but listen, it's not the kind of job where you're paid for your time as much as you are for your expertise. So it's also dependent on your experience level, right? So I priced this program at $9.97 US, because that's about a 2-day average pay for a junior story editor. For someone brand new who's starting as a story editor, $500 a day, and we say US because most of my clients are in the US, and that's usually the standard internationally of like if people are hiring you from other countries, they're going to understand the US dollar better. So that is about average as a day rate for a new story editor. But listen, it varies so wildly. Like my book rate is $1,000 a day Canadian as a story editor. I've gone up from that and I've gone down from that. It really depends on so many factors. How experienced is the person? Is this a project I want to put my time and effort in? How many days will they need from me? And how much of my expertise will they need? I go in the program. I not only talk about the craft of story editing, but we do have a business of story editing heavy component to it, because that's also something no one ever teaches, is like, how do we negotiate our deal, right? Even I'm a member of the Writers Guild of Canada. Even in the Writers Guild of Canada, if you are a story editor in development, or if you're a feature story editor hired at any stage of the movie, it says negotiable beside our rate. Negotiable. That's how negotiable it is. There is no set rate. People have differing, wildly different book rates. In fact, some of the story editors who came to me before that took my class last year had been way undercharging and just not knowing it, because story editors don't tend to talk to each other. There's not a lot of us in the world, and the ones that are the ones we have, we don't tend to get together. So that's one of the things I want to change. Those who know me as a script supervisor know that that's what I consistently do with script supervision, is I get us to talk to each other all over the world so that conditions improve for the script supervisor, so there's greater respect for the script supervisor's work, there's a greater understanding of what we do. It has ultimately resulted in people, standing up for themselves and getting their proper rates. And that's what I want to do with story editors. I love that we were talking to each other in that class about what we charge and how we could structure our deals and mistakes we'd made and wait, so that the business aspect of it is definitely part of the curriculum. There's a big thing that I never used to do when I started story editing, which I always do now, which is the before and after meeting. The before meeting with your client is so important. And some of the story editors in the program they would read the script first and then have the meeting with their client. I do it backwards, and I teach you guys how to do it backwards. Have the meeting with the client first, then read the script, and give them an assessment. There's different ways to handle it. And, I'm not saying one is necessarily better than the other, but I found for me to have that intake meeting first has helped the process so much. It helped me understand, first of all, if this is a writer that I could work with, because we're not, we're all different. The writers are all different. There's not enough story editors, not only because there's literally not enough story editors. Look, 90% of the work in writing is in development, right? If you watch on my YouTube channel, which is just Daniela Saioni, my name is my YouTube channel, you will see an interview I did with 4 of my TV writers, and who said most of the pay they get is for shows in development, is for development rooms in television. Those are the TV writers out of my program. And I found that to be the case with feature films too, as most writers can get some level of development money in Canada through CMF or telefilm. A lot of my clients are telefilm development money people, like that. They get money that way, and then they hire me as a story editor, because all those projects are required to have a story editor, by the way. There's not that many of us in Canada, and so already there's not that many of us. But then there's like other things, like we want a story editor who has like a similar viewpoint. If it's a queer movie, we want a queer story editor. If it's a movie about a particular cultural community, we ideally want a story editor from that cultural community. If it's a disability story, we'd love a story editor with a disability. Not necessary, but sometimes it's very important, right? Or sometimes the writer is writing about these communities and is not represented themselves in their work. So they want to at least hire a story editor or someone very high up in the food chain to help them, make those aspects of the project authentic. So there's not enough story editors. Definitely in Canada and the US, I'm pretty sure it's the case for most of the world. In my last cohort, we had Canada, US, and Australia represented. But in most of my writing programs, I get 6 countries. I get New Zealand and Ireland and the UK as well. I would love to have some UK students this term, because some of my strongest TV writers are in the UK. So I'd love to have some more UK people this time. But hey, I'm just going to keep going with it, whether or not. But I can only do it once a year because it's so hands-on. So this year, I'm starting April 16th till June 25th. I know I'm not on set. I know I'm not working on set. I'm on a show right now that wraps April 4th. So after April 4th, I'll be free. The way it's going to be structured this year is the first 3 are the training, the first 3 weeks. So it's every Sunday from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. EST, New York City, Toronto time. And they're 3-hour, they're basically 3 hours of content each of those Sundays. So it's 9 hours of the basic training where we talk about the business and we talk about the actual process of onboarding a client, and then the process of story editing, how to do the character work, how to understand your client's understanding of the character work, because everyone, learns writing a different way. And you have to, as a story editor, be quite open-minded and quite understanding that people will come from different perspectives, different experience levels, different superpowers. We all have different superpowers. Like I have so many, and I see this so clearly play out with my TV writers and my feature film writers in my regular writing programs, where people might be excellent at dialogue, but their understanding of structure, not so much. So even for the writers like that who took the story editing program, they elevated like their understanding of structure so that they could be more balanced. You need to be balanced in every area kind of thing to be a strong story editor. It doesn't mean you're going to come that way out of the gate, Structure used to be my superpower when I first started story editing. So that became a very valuable skill for me to have in that job. But over the years, because, I did stand up and I wrote and did punch up, my strength became dialogue writing. It just became that way. So it swung kind of the other way, and I had to revisit structure. And then now I'm pretty equal at both, which is awesome. But I didn't start out that way. I started out as the structure girl. I wasn't as much the concept girl. I can recognize now a concept that will sell, a concept that is personal and specific to the writer, because that's what I learned over the years as a writing teacher. But coming up with the concept was never my superpower, which actually made story editing way more fun for me, because I didn't have to come up with the ideas. I just had to look at what existed and try to let it live up to its fullest potential. So we look at our writers as our clients, who are usually writers, sometimes producers hire us, but we look at our clients and we look at the project and we get the big picture of, okay, what are their strengths and weaknesses and how can we help them? And then we extract the maximum funny if it's a comedy script, which is, by the way, what Punch Up is, extracting the maximum funny from a script, but based on the existing set of characters and the storyline, not dropping jokes into a script that are unconnected to all the character work and all of that. So what some of the writers who took the story editing program last year were saying, and I've some of the testimonials up on the page did say this, where they said they actually learned how to write in my story, even though they'd been writing for years and they were in prestigious writing programs, and even though they had taken my writing programs, everything finally started to click when they looked at it from the point of view of the story editor trying to help the writer, because then they could see, because I give you guys a bit of a roadmap. There's a book I'm writing about this called The Story Editor's Guidebook. I might call it The Story Editor's Handbook. That talks about the framework I use in my course. But that's basically in the initial 9 hours of training, we go through that and how you have a framework for analyzing and assessing scripts. It's really something that no one teaches. I had a lot of students in the last class who had worked for organizations like Coverfly, and they would do script coverage, which is different than story editing, but it's also along the same skill sets. So if you've never gotten script coverage before from Coverfly, it can be very hit and miss. Like there's some really good script coverage people there, and then there's some really like not so, it can be very hit and miss. Coverfly tends to be more reliable. There's a whole bunch of different script coverage services, and you know, they're paying people like $20 an hour. It's not story editing, but it is a way for people to get really good at analyzing things in a hurry, right? And analyzing specific, you know, character dialogue. So a lot of the people that did that, that job coming into the program then expanded on those skill sets to do a further story edit. So a story edit differs from just regular script coverage in that, well, it's more intense, like it's longer, meaning like you will get specific scene by scene notes. The story editor gives you a roadmap of what to do next, and the story editor will likely have more than one meeting with you. Sometimes people don't have the funding to hire me as a story editor yet, because you would have to do a union agreement. We'd have to like have, you know, it's a multi-day process, especially if it's a feature film. So sometimes people don't have that money, but they'll hire me to do a script marketability assessment where I just read your script and say, okay, this is how far or near it is from being ready to put on the market. Sometimes that's all people want to know. Is it ready for punch up yet? I am a punch up artist as well. By the way, that's a bonus I threw in this year, because last year we didn't do punch up because it's multi-genre, like it's there wasn't only comedy, there was every kind of genre. I think we had sci-fi and a period piece and comedy and 1 hour serial, you know, all kinds of, I try to get a whole mix so you guys get a whole experience, an experience of working with all different things. If you, for those who specifically get comedy scripts in film or TV, it is good to start to understand how to make them funnier. You could get hired as I mean, I am one of the rare people that gets hired to both story edit and punch up scripts. Not everybody has those skill sets, and they'll hire different people to do each. So I'm kind of a all-in-one combo if people are writing comedy, which is I think why I get a lot of the comedy clients. But you know, as a story editor, you might specialize in drama, and then you'll get a script that you know could be funnier, or it wants to be funnier. So I've thrown in my Punch It Up program as a free bonus this year. That's usually a $300 program where I train film and TV writers how to extract the maximum funny from their scripts using the techniques that we use as TV punch-up artists and film punch-up artists. Again, not something most people in the world even teach. So it's kind of crazy that I teach both, because I do both, and also because I've helped people in both, but also that I'm bundling them in one kind of package this year. I felt like that was what was missing last year. It went really well with my 2 cohorts. In fact, the first cohort, I did do a really quick version of Punch It Up as I was giving them the story editing training. It was a very, the first cohort I was teaching at the Pacific Screenwriting Program in Vancouver, which is like, for those Canadians, it's like the Canadian Film Center, but in Vancouver. So it's very West Coast based. And we had 50 hours. I had 50 hours to train them how to story edit, to help them story edit each other's work and punch up each other's work. So it was like an intensive version of the program, and it worked so well. So they had punch up, but the second cohort, we just focused on the story editing. Now I'm also adding the benefit of, and by the way, if you were in the first in either of the cohorts, you get access to all this term, because whenever you join any of my programs, you get lifetime access to them. So the people who did Story Editors Studio in March and August when I taught it last year, you're going to be able to log on and get Punch It Up this year. So Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas in spring. So yeah, because that's just how I roll. I will continually keep improving my programs over the years, and you'll just always have access to them. Depending on how radically they differ, there may be an upgrade fee, but not for the story editing one. It's not going to be that radical. With my script supervision program, I'm doing a radical reboot, so there is a slight upgrade fee, but it will also include all the live Q&As. We'll talk about that when that's ready. I think that's going to be ready this summer, but don't quote me on that. I got an insanely busy year ahead. I'm aiming for this summer for that. But I really want to meet the next cohort of my Story Editor Studio. I love that there's so many people here. So one thing that I would like to say, if you are watching this, because sometimes people pop in and pop out and they don't actually watch it. If you are watching this and you do want to register for Story Editor Studio, I'm going to throw in a free bonus for attending live. Just when you register for the program and I send you the welcome email, write me back and say, I saw your live video and you said I'd get half an hour of one-on-one coaching with you. That's what you'll get if you join the Story Editor Studio program this term and you saw me say it on this live. Not everybody's going to get that. It's just my way of rewarding you for being here. And let me see, what other questions did I get? So, do story editors get credit? This is a similar side of the coin to the question of what do story editors get paid? We always get paid. Listen, don't do the work if you're not getting paid. But like, what do they get paid depends on all those factors. And we talk about it in class, but like, a good starting rate is like $500 a day US, but, and that's average. You might get a little bit less, and you might get less if it's a TV pilot, if it's a short film or a TV pilot, obviously it could be less depending. But again, you might get more. It might be more involved than that, right? So there's that. But how do we get credit depends on a number of factors. Often we're like silent partners. So there is, it's all in what you negotiate, right? So you have to have a contract that you set up before you start working, at least some kind of written agreement. With the Writers Guild, there's like a 2-page agreement that we do in the Writers Guild where we have the basic terms laid out of what the credit is going to be. If any writing is involved, because not every story editor does writing. There's more money and possibly more credit involved if you are writing as a story editor. So some story editors are really script doctors because they'll go and they'll rewrite. That's a much different rate of pay. That's a much higher rate of pay. If you know, the Writers Guild minimum for a feature film script, if I was executing it by myself, one draft is $150,000 Canadian. So like, and a treatment, if I was just writing the treatment, is 30,000 Canadian. So if you're writing it, if you're rewriting it, or you're co-writing it with someone else, obviously it's going to be significant, but again, negotiable. So negotiable and put into a contract if you're actually doing writing. Most of the time you are coaching, you are guiding, you are giving direction, which the writer can listen to or not. And some of the writers who attended the story editing class and went through they realized, okay, so story editors are not God. We are fallible, or we are coming at it from our particular opinions and background and paradigms that we've learned under. So those writers learned how to interview their story editors when they hire a story editor. Because listen, I work with writers of all backgrounds. I get a lot of new writers, but I also get super experienced writers, super professional writers. It's a whole range, and everyone who works as a story editor probably knows, you will too. You're gonna see some shit, as I like to say. You're gonna see a lot, and you're gonna need to understand who you can help the best. And I always understand if I can't help someone, but I know someone else who can, that I can refer them. So I don't do a lot of genre stuff. So I don't do a lot of sci-fi or crime, although I have sold a couple of crime series ideas, but I don't actually, that's not my forte. It's not what I'm known for. So, but I had story editors in my program who I could say, hey, listen, I don't do this, but they know how to do this. So I could at least refer people. And that's sort of another side thing I wanted to achieve with the Story Editor Studio, is build a network of story editors that we could bounce, work to when there's always more people coming at me with projects than there is time for me to accept the work. So that's always going to be a thing. And then there's other reasons you might turn down work. So yeah, whether we get credited as story editor depends on the deal we make. I worked with a European client who was just going to camera with her first feature, and she's one of my amazing script supervision students who became a director named Rahela. And Rahela, her team credited me as script editor, which didn't sit well with me because that's not our credit here. It's story editor or story consultant. Actually, the union credit in the Writers Guild is story consultant or script consultant. But really what it is, it's the big umbrella, the often misunderstood umbrella of story editing. And that is working with a writer in development to get their script shaped. You end up having potentially a lot of creative impact on the movie, which is why you can't think of it like an hourly rate job. Like one comment you make could change the course of the whole production, right, on a creative level. But Rahela came to me at the very last stage, right before she went to camera, just to punch up, amplify, it was amazing. But yeah, I got the credit of script editor, which irked me because it sounded like I was like script coordinating, which is a different, wow, do you hear that? I have like a garbage chute outside my apartment and people are just throwing stuff down. But anyway, so yeah, but there's so many things we're called, and script doctors never get credit. My favorite script doctor is like Patton Oswalt. He's famous for like getting scripts and those people make a ton of money. So when I get to script doctor, it's really good practice for the day that I want a script doctor on that level. Carrie Fisher was a famous script doctor in Hollywood. Not a lot of people knew that. She was one of the highest paid and most in-demand story editors in Hollywood, but she was really at the level of script doctor. Patton Oswalt is another person like that. There's others whose names we never know because they never get the credit. They just cash those paychecks, which can be in the $250,000 to $1 million range in the United States. It's all negotiable, right? And it depends on your track record. It is something I aspire to. I'm not there yet, but I do have such a good process and volume of work that I think I can get there one day. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm still WGC, Writers Guild of Canada, WGA eligible. I had students who were WGA eligible. I'm trying to think if I had any WGA members in that class. I don't think yet. In my regular TV writing classes, yes. Any questions? So what is the job about? What do we get credit? Sometimes it depends on what you negotiate. And also, even if you negotiate that you get credit, producers can't guarantee it because producers are subject to the eventual contract they make with the buyer. So the network or the studio. So usually the contract will say best efforts to negotiate the title of script consultant, story consultant. Like I said, in the WGC, the actual union title is. Oh, they actually said that that's for contract purposes, but I could still get story editor as my on-screen credit. That's what they said to me. Yes, because the IPA, the Independent Production Agreement that we all work with in the WGC, and there's one for the WGA, those have very specific legal terms, and that's what they deemed for feature film the story editor position to be. I see so many people here from so many different countries. I see the UK here. I see the US and Canada. Do you have any questions for me, either about story editing in general or about the actual program? Oh, someone asked me a really good question today. She can't be here live with us, but she said, how far in advance are we going to get the scripts that we're story editing in the program? That is an excellent question. So last year, because last year the writers had, every writer brought their own script. Most of the writers were very respectful and handed in their scripts at the beginning of the class. So 2 weeks before we started class. So started the practicum part of the class. So remember, there's 3 weeks of training lectures and then 7 weeks of practicum. So April 16th, 23rd, and 30th is all the training. So my goal would be that by the 23rd that I have all the scripts assigned and scheduled. So basically we'll be tackling 2 scripts a week. So there's 7 weeks of practicum, 2 scripts a week. Some of them will be half hours, some of them will be features, some of them will be treatments. I'll try to balance it, with the time that we have because they're 3-hour classes. But there's basically to get certification, which is basically just a goal to get certified for this program so that you have a thing on your wall that says you're a certified story editor. I want you to work on at least 10 of the 14. So you can miss 2 classes. You can miss up to 2 of the practicum classes and still get certified. Now, obviously, you don't have to get certified. It's not, that's not exactly what the learning is. But if that's a motivator for you, just try not to miss more than 2 classes. You'll get the scripts ideally 2 weeks before the first class. And the reason I say this might change, last year when some of the writers really left it till the last minute. So a couple of the writers handed them in a week before class, which was not cool for everybody, but also a good learning thing because sometimes that's what your client will do. They'll hand in a script really late and you have a short turnaround. So, I let it go because it was a learning thing. But ideally, you'll have a minimum of 2 weeks. And some of those scripts, you'll have 7 weeks, You'll get better and faster as the weeks go on. That's what literally happens. You get stronger, faster. It's easier for you to make the connections of what's working and not working in the script and how you can help the writer. But to answer Natalie's question, April 23rd is when I hope to have all the scripts released and scheduled for the 7 weeks of practicum. If you have to miss more than 2 classes, if you catch up between the classes and send me something in writing, because you have the option of story editing verbally or in writing, right? And so verbally, if you'll each get like 10 minutes to 15 minutes, depends on how many people in the class and our time allotment. Some people will get to present verbally, because as a story editor, we do both. We work with people one-on-one. We give them our notes verbally, and we also give them something written. So you'll be doing a mix of both over the program. If you can't attend live, you just won't have the option of doing it verbally that week, but you can do the written notes to get up to the 10, and if you want, you can do all 14, but 10 is a goodly number to get certified in the program. Milan Director says, could you realistically get work as a story editor in Canada or US if English is not your first language? Excellent question. I had one of the people who took the class, English was her third language, but she was not trying to work as a story editor. She was taking the course as a producer, trying to, because she was on a lot of juries in Europe. So she was trying to but she produced a lot of films in New York State. So she was trying to get a handle on like how can I help my filmmaker? How do I know how much development money I need to, put towards this script and all of that. So so I don't think she was trying to work as a story editor, but she ended up being really good. Like, she could work as a story editor. I think it's up to, look, this is the truth with everything about story editing. As long as you get people to trust you, that's what matters. It's not necessarily your handle of English. It's your handle on story structure, character work, on being able to understand English dialogue and comment on it. If you're a punch-up artist, yes, I would say you should be from the same language as the script. But in terms of story editing, you're looking at a bigger picture. So if you have an impeccable knowledge of cinematic storytelling, of screenwriting, either in film or TV or both, and people trust you, that's how you get work as a story editor. People have to trust that you can help them. So Milan, as long as people can trust that you can help them, language is not the first factor in determining like what story editor you hire. I'm sure, because Milan, I think I know who this is, but even if it's not you, you're obviously a director. It says Milan Director. As a director, if you were hiring me as a story editor, I don't think you would care if I had an accent, right? I think you would care more of like, is there good word of mouth on me? Have I helped you before? Can I help you more? Do other people, who have a similar genre project to you feel I can help them? That's the number one hiring criteria. Know, like, and trust. That goes for any business, but it especially goes for story editing, because it's such a vulnerable act for a writer to come to you with a project and say, I trust you to tell me how to make this better. Right? Like, how vulnerable of an act is that? So you really need someone who you believe will empathize with you, will understand your project and understand what you're going for, which is the whole reason I do those early intake things with the filmmakers or the screenwriters or the producers, whoever the client is, before I even read their script, because I need to know what they're trying to accomplish with this particular story edit and all of that with this particular contract. MJ, we have to provide a script for others to critique. Define script minimum. Yeah, great. So for this program, I'm working with 4 formats. Half-hour pilot. So whatever draft it is, it could be a very early draft of a TV pilot. So half-hour TV pilot, 1-hour TV pilot, feature film. And listen, I think last term we had an MOW. So feature film or MOW, so like a 90-page-ish, 90 to 120 page-ish. Could be a little shorter too. Feature film or a treatment. So the treatment, because very often as story editors, we do get treatments that we have to critique and let people know if their story is on track before they write the script. So I do want to have at least one feature film treatment. Yeah, so those are the formats that I would accept. Now, listen, you don't actually have to bring a script in. I had a number of writers volunteer their projects. Like, professional writers of all different levels have volunteered their projects. They're waiting to hear from me if I can accept their projects into the program, because I want to give the writers who register for the program first dibs on whether, as long as people register before, because I want to give these writers an answer, right? The writers who volunteered their scripts. So if you register, let's say by April 10th, then I can say you got first dibs on deciding, are you going to bring a project of your own, or are you going to bring a project that you're working on for a client? And listen, there's going to be, everyone's got to sign an NDA. We can't talk about our projects outside the class. That is a given. So, and that's also for the client to sign and understand that that's being done, right? So that the client is aware that we're not just parading their script in front of, 14 to 20 strangers, however many, story editors are working on it. We have to have the full permission of the client. So if we can sort that all out in terms of who's bringing scripts and who is not bringing scripts, so I can schedule some of the scripts that writers have brought me, then that's all cool. We have plenty to choose from. I think I got 6, 6 scripts. And so far, the first 2 writers may be bringing their own scripts. So there's only 18 spots left. I don't know if we'll get all 20. It's fine if we don't. But if I'm not going to accept more than 20 because this is very hands-on and I want everybody to get a good experience out of it. April 10th registration and NDA fair. That's if you want. You can register later than that, by the way, because the course starts on the 16th. But if you but you won't get first dibs on whether you're bringing your own script. That's my caveat, because I've got to schedule everything, right? That's sort of, once I've got everything scheduled for story editing, that's half the battle. Because what I also do is I bring in the writer, so I bring in either the client or the story editor for the client, whoever wants to be involved in that preliminary interview for the class, right? So we've got to schedule that too. It's actually a really fun part of the process because it's the literal experience. Certificate means who recognizes it? Nobody yet. That's why I say it's just for you. So it's not like you have a story editing certificate, you are in the union. That's not how it works. To get in the Writers Guild, either Writers Guild of Canada or America, you have to sell something or be contracted. You either have to be contracted to story edit it or write or do some level of writing for a producer, a client who is signatory to either of those guilds. So the certificate is not like for union membership. It's not like, a stepping stone to anything other than your own sense of accomplishment. Maybe one day it will mean something to someone, but even when Praxis, so there used to be an organization in Canada that would train story editors. I don't even know if they gave out certificates. It was kind of an honor to for people to be in Praxis because it was once every 2 years or once every 3. I think it was every 2 years. So it was kind of an honor because it was the only place to train as a story editor in Canada. So it just signified that people had training. That's all it means. So I find that in all my programs, people like having the certificate as a marker of, okay, I've achieved this level according to Daniela. And who am I in the world, right? I'm just a writing teacher. I know I'm a very good writing teacher. I know that I have had student successes and students who have sold stuff, and now training the next generation of story editors, which makes me so happy. Maybe in 5 years it'll mean something. Right now, it just means something for you as an accomplishment. Yeah, no, cool. It's totally a good question because I do also give certification to my script supervisors, and that actually means something to unions. Script supervision is a technical position, and having training in that job actually does mean something to unions. So that's a fair question. It's just the world of writing doesn't really work that way, but at least it's a marker of something. You can't fake that you trained with me if you don't have the certificate, right? It's funny now that I'm sort of an influencer in the script supervision world in a way, because I have so many incredible alumni who are really, really out there in the world. People fake that they train with me, and I always say no, just ask for the certificate that I give at the end, or just call me and say, did you train this person? Because it's so funny that happens. But one day I hope the same thing happens, with my story editors and my TV writing. I actually haven't given certificates to my TV writing students. I really should start doing that because that program is now getting so much buzz. So maybe I will start doing that. But for the story editors, I do, because it is quite an accomplishment. Listen, it's a lot of work, right? So if you're committing to being in the program from April 16th to June 25th, it is a lot of work. It's like you're going to have hours of work to do every week. Give yourself at least 2 hours on every, and longer if it's a feature, right? So 2 to 5 hours of script. So that ain't hay, right? It is intense, and it is intense for a reason. You don't get good at story editing without story editing. And the big challenge for story editors is getting the volume of work to get the experience to get really good. So training aside, the training is obviously important to shortcut your learning curve, but training aside, it's the actual experience of it. And it's my most hands-on course. I would say it's even more hands-on than my TV writer's room is super hands-on, and my feature film writer's room, because we're developing one script, and that's super hands-on. That's going to be probably your calling card script. It's sometimes the script that people have sold. I'm so excited by all the sales my students are making, but it's one script. This is like a whole body of work that you're undertaking, and you're doing it in a group, so it's not as high stakes, meaning everyone's going to individually be giving feedback, but you're going to have the benefit of hearing how other people reacted to and approached the script, the story editing, from their perspective, and it's like hyper learning. I have an acting teacher named John Strasberg, who's incredible, one of probably the best acting teacher in the world for method acting, and just incredible. He's Lee Strasberg's son, because he has another son, but this is the guy in New York. And John, a part of whenever we do scene study with him, we do our scene, but then we have to sit through all the other scenes, and boy, oh boy, is my learning super hyper, it's super amplified, because I can see the problems that other actors are having in their scene work, because one day that's a problem I'm going to have, and I'm going to remember how John helped them through it, right? So that's kind of what happens when you see something really clear and you're in the work of the story editor. Then you hear another story editor's opinion, and also you'll get to see how individual we come at things, how individually we come at things. It's part of the job. It's part of why we get hired. It's part of our superpower. And so learning your own strengths and weaknesses and how it compares to other people. It's not really, I don't like to compare writers, and I don't like to compare story editors, because we're all unique, right? So I don't mean compare as in talent, but as in strengths and weaknesses, because we all have them, right? I'm teaching a class at 4, so I have 12 more minutes. So, but I'm happy to answer more questions, of course. Let me see. So I did also, if I didn't mention it already, there is a 3 payment plan. So for people, I know it's a lot, even though it's theoretically 2 days of paid, not a lot, but $9.97 is a lot for people to chew on, especially in US dollars if you're Canadian. And we have HST on top of that because of how Canadian law works, because I'm Canadian. So there is a 3 payment plan, and they're 1 month apart. So 3 payments of I think it's $349. It just makes it $50 more expensive to do the payment plan. So if that's easier for people, that's an option. I just wanted to let you know that. The Punch It Up program will be added probably in May. So when you register, it's just going to be to register. The actual lectures will go up. The first 3 weeks are going to be the pre-recorded lecture material, which I've completely revamped this year from last year's. I don't want to just put up last year's because they were beta, even though they worked really well. I want to add to them, so I'm re-recording them the week of April 5th. So I believe they'll be definitely up by the 16th, but at least the first one will be up for the 16th. So once you register, you're just registering and gearing up, deciding what script you're going to use, or if you want me to just pull a script from the bank of writers who, and by the way, if you're a writer and you can't afford to take the program, but you have a script that you would like to send me for consideration for this story editing program, you can still do that, because I still don't know how many people we're going to get. Could be last year, like I said, we had 13. People started asking after it was over, which happens, but I can only teach this once a year. It's so labor intensive. So hopefully if you're a writer who wants to take it, that you can join us this session. But if you just want to submit your script, please feel free. I'll let you know by April 10th, because everyone's going to have to let me know by April 10th if they're registering, and if they're bringing their own script. people will register later. It's fine, especially since the first 3 weeks are the pre-recorded lectures. They're the training, so you can theoretically join after April 16th, but you just can't come in with a script at that point, because I believe all the slots will be taken with the writers who have submitted scripts to the program. Link to the class is, okay, so if you go in the bio of my Instagram, there's a link tree, and in that link tree is all the courses I offer, and this course is called Story Editors Studio, and I believe the bit.ly link is bit.ly/Story Editors Studio. Or is it Story Editing? Damn it. I think it's Story Editors Studio. It's in the bit.ly link up there. I'll post it after this talk, after this live is, I should have written it down. I'm so terrible this way. Daniela, you make it so hard to sell your courses. It's so funny. People are like, I didn't even know that this course was a thing until after it's over, because I'm like not great at like letting people know it's out there. It's always been word of mouth for me up until the last couple of years. I've amped up my ability to promote stuff online, but still, bit.ly/ I believe it's story, STORY, editors with an S, EDITORS, studio, STUDIO, all as one word. I believe it's that. If I'm wrong, someone let me know in the chat. Check my link tree, because my computer is over there and I don't want to leave the frame to go get my computer. Oh my God. Because I just made the bit.ly link the other day, right? So I'm blanking on what I called it. Yeah. Because a whole bunch of the names were taken, by the way. So yeah, it's in my link tree in the bio of my Instagram page, and I'll post it after this live. How did you find me? So people are on my mailing list, right? So some of you are here because you're on my mailing list, and in the email I sent you for this talk, there were 2 buttons. One was the link to this Instagram page, and underneath it was a link to the class. So if you found me through my mailing list, definitely check out the link to the class. If you found me through an ad, in the ad there, because I did run ads for this talk, there's a little learn more thing. If you click on the learn more, it takes you to the registration page, the sales page for this class. And it's got the 2 options, like the full pay and the 3 payment option. And because you're here, remember to email me and say, you said I get half an hour of one-on-one coaching with you. And that is, so just remember to tell me that so I can schedule you. You get up to 2 years to schedule that. Most people schedule it very soon, like in the next few months. But what you can use that time for, people use that time for career coaching. You can't really use it for story editing. Obviously, like I can't story edit your work in half an hour, but if you want to talk some premises you want to develop and you just want some general feedback on, like, what do you think is a more viable premise for me to work on? Or if you want, most people use it for career stuff or for clarifying topics that they don't understand as well, and they want specific extra help with. That's totally cool. By the way, I didn't say this. We are going to do, in those 3 weeks when I'm putting up the pre-recorded content, I'm going to be in LA for part of that time, but I'm going to do live Q&As once a week so that you can ask me questions about the material. I just have to figure out what day it's going to be. I think it's going to be Wednesday evenings, but I'll figure it out. It might be Saturday. Just that I will be in LA for part of that. I'm based in Toronto, by the way. I train people all over the world. Right now, my most successful student this week, because it changes every week, is in London, UK, and I'm so rooting for him. Because he just made a wonderful deal for something he wrote in my class. So in my TV writing class, not in Story Editors. So, and the other thing is, this is super important. You might not know if this is like something you're ready to take either, right? So if you're not a producer, if you're not a development executive, if you're not in one of these like other professions that benefits from a story editing class, do you have enough experience as a screenwriter to take the class? This is an important thing to assess. You can email me and let me know, because sometimes you might not be ready to take this class. I mean, remember, people have to know, like, and trust you to hire you as a story editor. If you're not already a writer, what is it that you have that people will come to you with their scripts and believe you? Like, are you on film juries? There's people who served on film juries. They need to know this kind of information, right? Just to do their jobs. Development executives, people. I had film professors. I had people who taught at film schools. I've got 5 more minutes before I go teach my business class. I teach a program called Coffee Break MBA for creative online solopreneurs, which is the only Well, I say it's the only non-creative thing I teach, but that's not true because we approach business creatively. So it is also kind of, it's just sort of, it stands out amongst all my other programs. Thank you guys for being here, by the way. This is probably one of the, let's see, it says I got 4 people live, and people will always watch, 5 people live now. People will always watch more after the fact, but it's nice that you guys are here with me live. Thank you. Oh, thank you for the hearts, whoever said that. But yeah, 4 more minutes. Let me see. Did I miss telling you anything else? Yeah, if you're not sure if you're ready for it, like, I'll be totally honest with you, okay? Because listen, I let a couple of people through last term because they were like, I have a BFA in screenwriting. The reason I created half my courses is because my BFA in filmmaking and screenwriting, which was, I did a double thing, wasn't enough I didn't really learn my writing process till many years later, because film schools and writing schools even, they don't give you enough process. They don't give you enough practical and business and process training, all the stuff that leads to a successful career, which is why I created my From Shtick to Script, which is my TV writing program, which is why I created the feature film program. And now, which is why, because they didn't even teach us about story editing in film school. So if you are saying, well, I have a BFA in screenwriting, so I should have enough writing experience, it may or may not be the case. I mean, it depends. It really depends on the program you went to and how confident you are and how many scripts you wrote and all of that. So it might warrant a conversation, and I'll be totally honest with you. Like, I'm not going to just take your money and not be able to help you, because if you're, and I will always clarify for the people who are in the program, who are not at the same level. But for some people, I will honestly say, please take my feature film writing program or my TV writing program first, or please write a few more scripts before I'll be honest. I didn't say that to the people last year because they were so confident, but when it got to actually doing the work, they just weren't at the same level yet. And I warned them ahead of time. If you're not at the same level, don't blame me because I gave you the warning. I will do what I can to even the playing field to explain for the people who don't, understand structure at all. It's one thing to be weaker at structure and to not understand structure at all. Structure is a fluid thing, especially in the modern age of streaming services. It's much more fluid than it's ever been, but you still have to have a general understanding of what the benchmarks are for storytelling for the medium of film and television, right? So it's a lot. It's why some people said, oh, I've been writing for all these years, but I finally learned to write in the story editing class. I get it. But it really benefits like intermediate level writers with some experience, or junior story editors with experience story editing, but not having a process, not having like a foundation of like, a whole breadth of experience. And definitely those other, that was a surprise to me that producers, the biggest surprise was the picture editor. She was fantastic. She's a fantastic picture editor. She ended up being a fantastic story editor. I would never guess that in a million years. She hasn't ever written anything. But of course, as an editor, you're writing all the time, right? You're just writing in post, trying to make things better. We have 1 more minute. Any more questions? I'll obviously leave the recording up for people to find after the fact. I think I talked about all the questions I got in advance. Yes, we'll focus on the business. We'll focus on the craft. We'll focus on different genres. There'll be nothing shorter than a half-hour TV pilot. We won't do short scripts in there, but the same concepts will apply. The punch-up is just the training. We are going to incorporate punch-up in our story editing, by the way. For those who want to volunteer punch-up notes into the story editing notes, I'm all ears, because that's what I do as a story editor, because I'm a comedy person. But it's not, punch-up will just be the training. It's a bonus training. What I like to do when I teach Punch It Up is also have joke gyms, which obviously we won't be doing, but at least you'll get all the training for punch-up. Joke gyms is like, I'm going to see if I can run one this year. They're like 10 weeks of like twice a week meeting and working out our joke writing chops. All right. It's 4:00. Oh my God. I've been yammering for an hour. Well, I hope I answered your questions. If you still have more, please email me at mondocinema@gmail.com. That's mondocinema@gmail.com. Hi, Matt. I see you just popped on. I'm about to go teach another class, but thank you. Thank you for being here. And looking forward to inspiring you. I hope some of you can join us. And if you can't, well, I'll do it again next year, I'm sure, because it's been so much fun to do the first 2 cohorts. I think this cohort will also be super exciting. All right. Bye.